going to be such a cool session because I am using supplies that you wouldn't believe or assume a professional painter would use. And we're going to create something incredible with Crayolas. Okay, so you just, and I've said it so many times before in so many of my videos, just go raid your kids' Crayolas, or go to the dollar store, pick up some Crayolas. I'm using a very simple brush. It's just a round brush. This is what we call a round brush. And this brush cost me a quarter, literally. I'm not using anything fancy. And that is the point of today. We're gonna paint a poppy, my absolute favorite flower. We're going to paint it with the most basic of materials, but I guarantee you, we're gonna create something spectacular. Okay, so I have my Crayolas. This came in like this groovy plastic container, but it's kind of annoying to work with, so I'm taking these out. And I'm gonna spray them down. The thing with quote unquote cheap watercolors is that they often have a lot of filler in them, you know, a filler that makes the manufacturing of the paints a lot more affordable. So, but the thing is you can kind of bypass, you know, fillers tend to like mute colors and not make them as saturated, but you can kind of bypass that by really spraying them down and getting these little pots of color super creamy and saturated, and it doesn't take too long for that to happen. So spraying them down, taking a little dropper of water, however you want to do it is such a great trick. Okay, so we're gonna do a poppy. The thing I love most about Icelandic poppies, specifically one of my favorites, they've got all those beautiful like peachy tones, peach, yellow, pink sometimes. So I love mingling all those colors together. So I loaded up a little bit of peach. I just happen to have a really pretty peach here. If you've got a really basic Crayola set, just grab an orange, mix together yellow and red, add a lot of water to it, you're good to go. We're gonna create our first petal with a couple of strokes, move that color around. As the brush runs out of paint, add water to the paper and your brush, not necessarily more color. I'm gonna grab a little yellow while my paper over here is still wet, and I'm gonna pop in a little yellow. So you'll notice it created kind of this like sweepy, like fan look with my brush. So I'm not ending each brush stroke at the same height. Okay, sometimes I came up and lifted my brush to a point. Sometimes I just kept scrubbing like here. But it's not a uniform shape all across the top, nor is it a uniform shape across the bottom. Grabbing a little more peach, you could even bring down some of these areas a little bit to little points. So there's your basic poppy petal shape. I'm gonna grab a creamy pastel yellow. Again, I have the more like super duper deluxe Crayola set here, and it's got some pastels. But if you just have a basic, just grab a bright yellow and water it down. And let's go and make another poppy petal here. Similar technique, but not exactly the same. We're dealing with nature here. I grabbed a pink. Nature creates beautiful, engaging variety, and we want to keep that in mind. So similar technique, kind of this sweeping, washy shape that is very organic on all edges and not uniform, but still different than the first one. And you see how I'm creating these like almost these little points that are starting to give some direction towards what will be a center of the flower. I'm gonna grab pink this time. If you don't have pink pre-made, red, and water it down. And again, these sweepy kind of motions. I am barely putting any pressure on my brush, grabbing a peach. This is wet in wet, okay? When I'm adding one color to a part of the paper that's already wet, that is called wet in wet. If you wanna make those marks that kind of end in a point, you're gonna make your stroke, Press down, lift up, press down, lift up. That's how you're getting those little pointed areas. This is getting a little too pointed, so I'm gonna rein it in, Kristy. Add a little yellow, more wet and wet. Wet and wet, friends, is the absolute heart and soul of watercolor, in my humble opinion. It is the bread and butter of watercolor. It makes watercolor what it is, that magic, flowy, beautiful quality that people get so excited about with watercolor. It's because of the technique called wet and wet. All right, next petal, same idea, sweeping strokes that kind of end in a point here and there, but I want you to make this one smaller. It's not gonna be as big, and I will tell you why. Our eyes are drawn to odd numbers of leaves, odd numbers of petals, odd numbers of just items in general are more visually pleasing. So I want to make this poppy with 5 petals. I just added a little bit of water here just to kind of soften things. I'm moving the water around, letting it mix the color on the page. You will notice, and I promise I'll get back to the 5. My artist brain got a little distracted. It is what it is. It's how I function. This technique of adding in just clean water into an already wet area is a great way of blending color on the page, mixing color on a page, if you will. Notice I am not mixing any colors over here on my palette. It's really not my jam. It's not my thing. I don't do a lot of mixing off of the page. My mixing happens most often directly on the page, like this. So you see, I've got a lot of colors going on here, a lot of variety, a lot of interest with color, but it's all happening on the page. And this is how I function. This is how this is how watercolor is most charismatic to me, is when you let it do its thing on the page. You don't force something to happen on the palette and then try to bring it to the page. You let the magic happen on the page. So try that. After you painted the first few petals, go ahead and add some clean water is the key. Keep your water clean and add clean water and just kind of push it around. Guys, I just want to remind you, these are Crayolas, okay? Now, I love Crayolas. We have a Crayola factory here close to where I live. I could spend hours there, and I've been known to do that. There is nothing wrong with Crayola, but my point is that Crayolas are not professional grade watercolor. And I think the belief is that you, in order to start this, in order to be serious, in order to really invest yourself in the painting process, you need to have the best of the best of the best materials. And I am here to tell you, if that's your excuse for not starting, you're out of excuses, okay? You're out of excuses, because you don't need the best of the best. You just need something. You just need a palette. You just need a brush. Now, don't get me wrong. Excellent paper, highest quality paints, a really beautiful brush, that can make a difference. But the biggest difference you're gonna make in your life today, tomorrow, or the next day is actually just starting to paint watercolor and letting the joy of these amazing brushstrokes wash over you. The biggest mistake you can make, in my opinion, is to not even start that process because you don't have the quote right materials. Sorry, I'm getting a little excited. I get pretty passionate about this, so forgive me. All right, let's go in and make our 5th petal. This one's curving up a little bit. I like to be mindful of how these petals are curving. Some are, curving this way. Some are curving up this way. This one's kind of straight. I like to keep that variety. These 2 here, let them touch a little bit. That kind of feels good. I like how that's happening. There we go. This needs to come in a little more towards the center. All right. Wonderful. Poppies have kind of this yellowy green center. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in. That's a little too yellow, but I'll show you what I'm gonna do. Notice how vibrant these colors are. Now they will dry a little bit more muted, but look at how vibrant they are. And I wanna show you, remember I sprayed. these pigments now are this like beautiful, like syrupy kind of situation going on. So when you dip into them now, because they're syrupy and soft, you're gonna get the most pigment out of them now. That's why spraying is so important. I just added a little bit of that really bright kind of emerald green, not like totally in love with it. So I'm gonna take a little water and soften it. I have a paper towel over here. When I don't like something, I take a clean brush. This is called lifting. Clean brush, lift, blot. Clean brush, lift, blot. Okay, let's see if I can get a better green in there. See if I find something I like here. Yeah, that's nice. All right, add a little clean water. Lift that little bit of green out there. All right, we've got a nice center starting here. Now, oftentimes the biggest dilemma is, what do I do while, this is drying? Because at this point, like I'm doing a little bit of like this forced blending where I'm adding a little water and letting the center of the flower just connect a little bit with the petals, just to force that blend a little bit. But after that is done, I am gonna wanna let this dry a little bit. And the biggest question I get is, number one, what do I do while it's drying? Do I move on to another painting or what? And when do I know when it's time to let an area dry before I go back into it? And for me, I like to just lay down the first base, let it dry, make it a really beautiful, juicy, exciting base like we have going on here. If you feel at this point you want to dab in any more color anywhere to even push that juiciness even further, by all means. I'm going to do a little bit of it here on the edges. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Isn't that just spectacular? See, I'm going off topic here again, but seriously, look at that. I'm gonna lift this up a little bit. You need to see that. If at this point, things are really wet on the page, I always say, if you are not getting kind of that movement, if you're not seeing the color explode like you think it should, it's because you don't have enough water on the page. You should have puddles. If you want juicy, explosive watercolor, there should be puddles of water on your page, okay? So feel free to let it move a little, move your page. All right, but I am pretty much at the point now where I want to let this dry. So what I do in the meantime, I make leaves. We can do some pods. Poppies have very distinctive, beautiful pods. Let's do a little pod. I'm going to take a green. I'm going to go right on with my brush, not too much pressure, and make kind of an oval. I'm going to take a little bit of a darker green and expand my oval over here just a little bit. Let's do it a little bit more. I think that's gonna be too much green. There we go. A little bit of that darker green right here, and then let's go over here and expand it a little bit. Boom, you have your pod. I'm gonna make a little stem, no pressure, barely any pressure, and sweep a little stem out of the bottom here. This, making a nice, natural feeling, effortless curve with your brush. I'm going to tell you, it can take some practice. You might want to do a little bit on a scrap piece of paper and just practice making these stems a little bit, because that can feel, when you're just beginning, creating a line like that feels effortless can feel a little bit intimidating. So by all means, practice that a little bit, like literally go on a scrap piece and just make some marks. See how it feels. Make some slow marks, make some fast marks, and just get a feel for that. All right, nothing wrong with stopping and practicing, nothing at all. All right, you see how that peach is creeping up here? I did that by design. You can push it back a little bit with a dry brush and blot. Again, lifting a little bit. If you're getting too much of that creeping up your stem, you're not feeling it, push it back, push it back, push it back. All right, let's do a leaf. Grabbing that same creamy green. Again, if you don't have pastels on your palette, grab just a green with a lot of water. If you have a little bit of white, use the white. White's okay. Poppies have these like pointy, ooh, that's really creeping. Look at that. I don't often use paper towel to blot, but I get the question a lot. Can you? Absolutely. You're going to get a more kind of severe effect when you use paper towel to blot, but in this case, because that color kept creeping where I didn't want it to go, I really needed to get in there with a paper towel. All right, so pointy leaves. And again, remember, blend your color on the page. It's so freeing. Add in different greens as you go. And I'm just kind of dabbing and creating a shape as I go. Dab, dab, going out to a point, going out to a point. Dabbing, dabbing, dabbing. And there you have your first leaf. You want to add a little bit of depth, add a stronger version of a previous color, add a new green that's even more bold. When your paper is wet, that is kind of the, I say every night around 8 o'clock, it's the witching hour for my kids. They go a little nuts. Well, when your page is wet, that's basically the witching hour for your watercolor. That's when you want to really use all the energy, all of the mojo that's happening when your page is wet. That's when you want to add color, and that's when you want to experiment and move color around on the page. That's the time, not when it's starting to dry and you put color on and it doesn't move. No, you want to do your thing right there when it's wet. Loving the shape of this leaf, so I might actually, I feel like it got a little out of control, so I'm gonna add a second leaf here, or at least the suggestion of one, and kind of, yeah, make it look like it connects up here. So it's this like little boop, little check mark shape behind that one. That's fun. I like that. Okay, I'm thinking odd numbers, just like I did for my petals here. I have my 5 petals, and let's just stop. I'll get back to the 5 thing. Let's just stop and take a moment to admire the absolute spectacularness going on here. Remember, I would tell my son to pronounce his words properly if he said that. Remember, when I pushed some of that green out into these petals, well, I did that on purpose because look at what's happening here. Look at what's happening here. It's blending into these petals so beautifully and so softly. It's just, oh, it's enchanting. I'm sorry, there's no better word for it. It's just enchanting. I'm in love. Love it. All right, enough of that. Okay, a little leaf. Let's get a little leaf going here. Just a little one. Okay, and we need a third. Where are we gonna put it? Let's put it over here. Let's see. That is half of the leaf. Grab another color. Don't feel the need to always lay down the same color every time you're creating a leaf or a petal. Mix it up. All right, there. 1, 2, 3 we have. These leaves are a little more regular, quote, shaped. That's fine. You could make them pointy if you wanted, kind of like this. Drag out some points here if you wanted to make it look more like a traditional poppy leaf. But this is your painting. This is your domain. You do you. We're not even using a reference photo. That is by design. You can use a reference photo. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's a certain freedom that comes from not using a reference photo. Okay, right here, this little bleeding bit happening, not loving, I'm adding clean water and pushing it back, blending it out and blotting a little bit as I go to get that bleeding under control. Okay, we are back at it. Everything is completely dry now, so it's really important, let your piece dry to move on to this next step. And what I'll be doing right now is adding detail. I often call this linear detail, which means I'm just gonna be adding some really beautiful thin lines, kind of in the shape of the petals, the shape of the leaves, kind of like a contour line. So if you think about like a contour map of the US, there's all those little thin lines that are really close to one another that just repeat and repeat, kind of like that. So let me show you a little bit using the same brush. I want to make sure it's really nice and to a point. Okay. I'm going to go into this petal here. Spray my pigments again. Really helps juice up these colors because our Crayolas are filled with fillers, so we want to juice them up, get them nice and soft. All right, so I'm really loading up that brush. Dab it a little bit on a paper towel so it's not too wet. All right, get these out of the way. This is something you might want to practice on a scrap sheet. I'll do that for you just to give you an idea of where we're headed here. I'm gonna hold the brush almost perpendicular to the page. Really soft touch, very little pressure, and I'm gonna make some wispy, soft lines. This is just practice. See if you can repeat the same kind of line over and over and over again. Your paint will eventually start to run out. That'll give you a lighter line, a scratchier line. That's okay. Let it run out. See how it feels. Great practice. Do that until you're feeling confident. All right, we're gonna reload our brush, dab on a paper towel, and let's start. The key here is a very light touch. Making some of the lines wavy. I'm going to go up here at the top and just do some short little strokes for accent. So pretty. Let's grab a different color. Let's do a little bit of the orange. Just using this orange right here. It's kind of a peachy tone. Fill it up, dab on a paper towel, and let's go down here. Make the lines a little bit straighter and even less pressure. Fan them out ever so slightly. Do some really close to one another. Do some further away. Do some really close. A bunch of little ones down here. Fun accent. And maybe just some short ones up here. Don't feel like you have to fill the whole petal. You don't. Poppies have that beautiful texture that almost looks like there's teeny tiny little accordion folds in the petals, and that's kind of the effect that we're trying to get here. Could go to orange again, maybe get a little pink on the brush along with the orange, dab on the paper towel, and let's go. You feel free to move your page around. Feel free. A little too much paint on there, dab, and here we go. I'm going to keep these lines a little shorter. Remember, this is nature. We're recreating a natural, organic vibe. We don't want each petal to look the same. We don't want each petal to be treated the same in terms of how we apply the detail. A little bit up here. Maybe a little bit up here. That's nice. Gorgeous. You should be excited right now because this is really fun. This is really beautiful. And was it all that stressful? I don't think so. I hope not, at least. All right, I'm just gonna keep going around. I'm gonna get a little crazy here, and I'm gonna load up a green because there's some really pretty green bleeding into this petal, and I wanna exaggerate that a bit. So load up, dab on a paper towel, and get to it. Really light movement. You may be going so light that you don't make a mark. We'll just try again. You'd rather go lighter with your pressure than heavier. While you've got that green on your brush, go ahead and load another darker green on the brush, totally up to you which one. We're gonna go down to this leaf and give it some life. Right down the middle. Don't go straight, do a little bit of a wiggle, and then come off of that. Again, really light, really wispy, very little pressure. If this is making you nervous, go to a scrap piece of paper and practice. There's no shame in taking a time out to practice a little bit. Absolutely none. And same thing here. Let's give this guy a little life. Just gonna kind of leave it, the detailing to the top of that leaf. Let's take a look around. While we're letting that dry, let's go ahead and add a little life to this pod. Remember, these are Crayolas. Take a moment and admire and be super proud of yourself. Look at what you've created with Crayolas. Look at what you wouldn't have in your life right now if you had assumed you needed fancy supplies. Just let that soak in. All right, we're gonna follow the contour of this pod. So we're gonna go here and here, curve around, all right? Let's do it. Really light. Not every line needs to be the same height. Not every line needs to be the same thickness. I'm going there with a really nice thick accent. Some tiny ones. And let's do a little bit up here, right around where that flower's just gonna start to burst out. Gorgeous. And something I love to do with stems is add these little C-curve accents up along a stem, like little smileys. It just gives them, and you feel free to change your color. I'm gonna go to like a little bit of a yellow green, dab on a paper towel, and continue. It just gives them a little bit of shape. See that? So nice. Just a little. It's such a simple detail, simple technique, and it gives stems so much life. Look at that. Gorgeous. All right. Poppies have a very distinctive center. I like adding them in at some point. I'll show you what that looks like. It's almost like a little, like a lazy star. Or like an amoeba or something. I don't know how to describe it. So basically like these little petal looking things. Classic center of a poppy. Now that all of that is wet, if you want to go in and add some even more intense greens here and there for contrast, feel free. I'm gonna add a little bit. That didn't really work. Add a little bit more. There we go. Just a little bit of darkness there at the center. Guys, Crayolas. Just gonna say it again in case you forgot. These are Crayolas. All right, let's get this petal going with some detail. And I haven't forgotten that leaf, don't worry. I'm gonna do a peach, maybe get a little yellow on my brush at the same time. This is something I do all the time, probably makes people cringe. Go right back and forth. Why not? 2 colors on your brush. Get a little drop of water there, get that off. Okay. Dab on your paper towel, and I'm gonna follow this curve. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go pretty detailed with this. I'm feeling it. That's nice. Always stop to admire what you're doing. Stop to look, stop to feel good about it. Stop to give yourself a pat on the back, for goodness sake. Absolutely. You're not here. There's no point in being here if all you're gonna do is tell yourself you're screwing up, it doesn't look good. No. You find the moments here that are wow, find the moments here that you're excited about, and you concentrate on those. And you keep reminding yourself of those moments. Do little curve marks here. That's a really fun accent. Maybe a few more little kind of like tick marks. So it's like a line, but not continuously filled in. That's fun. Be a little bit of that down here. Yeah. All right, let's go in, get this leaf some life, and we're gonna call this done soon because there's no sense in fussing on something that is beautiful and is working. We can move on and be happy and proud of what we've created. No sense to fuss. This is working. You need to find a place and a way to be happy and confident. When you know something's working, be able to recognize it and let it be. All right, right down the middle, real light pressure, wiggle a little bit, and then come out from that middle line with some curvature to create these striations in the leaf. Let's extend them out into these points a little bit. There. Let's do another one up here. Okay. And remember, we have this leaf going on behind. Let's do a little something to give that. That wasn't quite dark enough. You need nice dark green so that shows up. And just some curved short marks there. There we have it. There's your poppy. Crayola poppy. It's vibrant, it's punchy, it's spirited, and it was done with a palette that costs $6 and a brush that costs $1.25. Art for Joy's Sake is just that. It's about immediacy. It's about meeting yourself where you're at. It's about simple supplies. It's about diving in with a sense of recklessness for being perfect, being right, being correct. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be right. You don't need to be correct to find joy in this. You just need to be present. You just need to show up. And I'm so grateful that you showed up today. I really hope you give this a whirl. Go find those Crayolas and dive in. Happy painting.